Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Dazed and Confused, my three times a week live broadcast where I talk to you about social media, about video, what you as a brand and as a business could do yourself for free. And we're live across multiple platforms today. So wherever you're watching, make sure you say hello, whether it's on Twitch, Periscope, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching. Make sure you just stick in the comments, hello, I'm watching, and can say hello to you during the broadcast. On Wednesday, I was meant to be chatting to someone. It didn't quite happen, but today they're with us, so we're going to talk to them in just a moment. First things first, though, who the hell am I? If you're brand new to these broadcasts, what place is it mine to tell you anything? Well, I'm Simon Scholes. I'm the founder and creative director of Perception Studios. We're an award-winning visual marketing agency, and we help brands and businesses create content that helps them stand out on social media. However, a few years ago, it became very obvious to me that not every brand, not every business was in a position to spend endless amounts of budget on having content created for themselves. But social media is all about being consistent. So if you are not consistent on social media, how can you fix that? And that is the million-dollar question. So what I did was I sat down and I came up with a process, and I called it How to 9 Times Your Social Media. Basically, I took all the stuff I was talking about, bastardized other things people were talking about, turned it into a book. It went to #1 on Amazon, which was awesome. You can still get it for like 99p in the section below. And basically, it takes you through from everything from planning your content all the way through to podcasting and all the stuff that happens in between. And that's what I want to try and do, is get you to do, is start creating content for free. What can you do yourself that won't cost you a penny to create content? How can I help you create that content? So that's the process. And today I'm going to talk to another business, another brand who create content themselves. And it's an area that a lot of people have spoken to me about over the last few months, especially since lockdown started at the very start of this year. When was it? March, whatever it was. And I've had charities get in touch and say, what do you think we should be doing as a charity content-wise? Now, I have my own viewpoints, but how about instead I pull on somebody who I know has a viewpoint themselves? This is David Woollett from Salisbury Hospice. Hello, David.
Hello, Simon. It's great to talk to you today.
So first things first, you're Dr. David Woollett as well. I should point that out. You're not a doctor, but you are a doctor. You are a doctor. So explain first of all, what's your background?
My background, similar to yours, is radio. It's been a radio career lasting many years. Presenter, producing. And I think over those years, understanding audience, which ultimately everybody has to do now, particularly if you're in marketing and things, you have to understand who you're talking to and why you're talking to them and how you can talk to them. So those kind of things have helped. That career has certainly helped see where I'm going now and understand what it's all about.
So you work for Salisbury Hospice. What does it you do for the hospice themselves?
So I look after all their marketing, their communications, anything that goes out to our supporters, and also not just our supporters, but people who are not our supporters yet, people who've never heard of us. I have to, carefully craft stuff that can cross those boundaries as well. My job also involves sort of talking to the clinical team as well, talking and providing messaging to them about what we're up to and what we're doing. And that works the other way as well, taking information from our clinical team to package it to our supporters in a kind of non or less clinical way.
Okay, so I mean, without wanting to delve too deeply into it, because it's quite a dark subject, but what do the hospice actually do themselves, and what is their modus operandi?
Well, it's funny, when I first started the role, and it's true of a lot of people too, they have sort of an idea of what a hospice is, and it is a sort of end of life, sure, but they think quite often when you go to a hospice, that's it, and it really isn't. It's totally, totally different. It really is a light, refreshing, glorious place, which is totally different from what you may imagine. And then, it's quite often people think that when you come to a hospice, you're coming to right at the end of your end of life care, and that's not true either. We have a lot of people who will be cared for in our hospice and many other hospices across the country who will be going back for many years. So it's very different. And in many ways, that's my job. I have to show people what a hospice is all about.
Okay, so how do you approach that then? Because obviously you're trying to break down that barrier. What would be your first line of attack?
Well, in many ways, it's just telling people what our amazing nursing team does, and and basically trying to give an experience to people about our hospice in a fun, friendly way that really shows them about the sort of day-to-day things that go on. And the therapies, for example, we do exercise therapies with a lot of our patients. This, I should say, package this up as saying before COVID, because obviously COVID has changed things a lot.
Just a smidgen, yeah.
Just a lot, yeah, a little bit, and then we even though it's changed things, we're trying to remain the same. We're doing it remotely, so we've had to the clinical teams have had to work very quickly and very fast, much like the charity team, to change things to a more digital way of doing things. But that's happening. But going back to your point, it is basically showing people how and why they do things in the hospice, and make people understand that it is a lot more than people see it as the right end of life, and it's not. It's actually about care for people who may have been diagnosed with a long-term terminal illness, but actually that terminal illness is not going to end tomorrow. It could end many years from now, and it's about that care that is involved in that.
I was going to ask, you've mentioned it, lockdown. How has the charity kind of moved forward in lockdown? You've talked about digital. Has it been a vast, massive pivot transformation for them? We
were really lucky because we were already on the digital side and we were already doing lots. Certainly from when I started there, we were doing lots on all of our social medias. So we had quite a decent audience to start with. But of our big things, right from the beginning, of course, is events. Obviously we have various segments of our fundraising, but events is one of those, a key one, not just for fundraising, but also to get our name out there and publicize what we do. We had big multi-participant events, take place in the summer. Sometimes you've had like runs and walks and all that kind of stuff, don't you? Yeah. 1,000 people, and these were all being planned, back in January, February, before the world went mad, and terrible, as it is, terrible COVID happened. We suddenly, when we were realizing things were going to change in March, we thought, well, hang on a minute, events is not going to be something we can rely on anymore. We've got to change things very quickly. And we were at home, home working and doing Zooms and catch-ups, and we were like, it was a daily basis. We were changing things, and flexibility was key. Whereas before, our events had been very much, that's what we do then, we do that one then, and it was very, already built in stone what we were doing. Suddenly in March, everything was thrown out, and we had to just change everything to digital.
So rather than completely deleting those events, have you, rather than even rescheduled them, have you taken them digitally? Have you considered that as a charity?
Absolutely. Right from the beginning, digital became the thing. And we were really, really lucky because our supporters completely bought into that. They it was, I know it was I don't want to say it, I will say it, honeymoon period right back in the beginning of lockdown, because people couldn't quite get what was going. We were all at home. We all had suddenly loads more time, and people just got behind us as a charity because they knew that with lockdown, our events would be cancelled. Income would be significantly lower, and yet we seemed to have a surge in digital and virtual eventing for us, which was incredible.
So has that included things like, obviously, like the London Marathon, cancelled the London Marathon. They had the elite race, but then also people could go and run the marathon themselves and that. So like those kind of events, have people said, right, you know what, I can't do the Salisbury Hospice run, or I can't be sponsored by them to go and run the London Marathon. I will still do it and raise money for them. Have they done that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the game changers right back in the beginning was a thing called the 2.6 Challenge. And it was something organised by the London Marathon guys. 2.6 being 26 miles, 2.6. You could either do something that was 2.6 minutes or 2.6 miles or 26. You do something with the number 2 and 6. You could
remember seeing something to do with the fact that you did it around your living room.
Yeah, exactly. It was obviously lockdown, and I did a 2.6 kilometers or 2.6 miles around the sofa. It took what time it took, and I got some sponsorship and we raised some funds, and I was just one of millions of people who took part, not just for our charity but for many other charities too, who really did at the beginning kind of take that idea that you could do something virtually remote, away from everybody else, but still feel part of a bigger family, feel part of all those other fundraisers doing it at the same time. And that made such a big difference, not just to me, but to all of our stakeholders, if you like, all the trustees and the charity, all of the management. They suddenly realized, as we all did, because we're all new to this, that this could really work. And from that moment forth, the 2.6 challenge became other virtual events, and we started to think quickly about changing all of the things that we could do to become virtual events.
And I suppose, as with a lot of businesses, social media, were your bosses scared of it effectively, a bit worried about what might potentially happen from it?
I think that's always the way. I don't think that'll ever change. I think people will always be, to a degree, as I am. I'm constantly monitoring what people are saying, how it's being viewed, all those things. I don't think you can ever not do that. But sometimes you do have to release the reins a little bit and go, you know what, we're going to see if it's going to work. And like anything, it's got to be from the heart. When you're talking to your audience, it's got to be the truth. It's got to be honest. We are in a difficult situation. We're in a totally different, challenging situation to where we were last year. If you're honest with people, people will reach out as well and go, you know what, I want to help you.
So one of the things I've always said about social media for charities, and you kind of said it yourself, is to explain the story behind the charity. And for most charities, especially your own, but lots of other charities as well, it's all about doing that case study element, speaking to the people who you've helped or the families you've helped, creating video content, blog content, that kind of thing. Alongside that, what else do Salisbury Hospice do, for example? Is there any other regular content that you guys create that will then help you show the values of what you do, what it is that you do, and then putting that content out? Is there anything else you guys do?
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned all of the ones we do there, case studies, talking to families. I was interviewing a lady this morning who's doing the Land's End to John O'Groats, walking it virtually. Wow. So she's walking a daily walk of 5 to 8 miles, every day. And over the period of the year, she will walk from Land's End to John O'Groats. And it's, talking about her experience with our hospice. Her father-in-law passed away in our hospice. Why she's doing it is there, how she's doing it. And that becomes a big deal, because then you can talk to other people about, how they might want to do a virtual event, to help supporters. They might think, oh, I didn't even think about it. I'd love to get involved as well. So there's all that kind of content. Then there's the content from our nursing team and our just showing what it is our nursing team do, and the importance of that, and that's hugely popular with all of our supporters, and rightly so, because ultimately they are, without them we wouldn't be here either. So it's a case of
front line almost,
relationship, and that's a hugely, in terms of, if I was to go, it's a terrible thing, but if you're going on likes on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all of those things, the hospice team is the holy grail. That and what they do is the holy grail, and also obviously our supporters and what they're doing is the holy grail too. Outside of that, other content that we tend to generate can be really other things, just about it could be simple as like me going down to the hospice garden and taking a photograph and just talking about how lovely the garden's looking at the moment, how that impacts our patients' lives, how it's important for calmness and all those things. Those are really big deals as well, but I can generate that myself. I don't need to make.
I was just going to say, how much content do the hospice and yourself, because obviously the marketing team, how much content do you kind of manifest? Do you have, like you said, the photographs? Do you have podcasts for the Salisbury Hospice? Do you have a YouTube channel or those type of things?
Absolutely. A YouTube channel, which contains all our video content for the website. I kind of use that as a back end. So I use the YouTube. We don't necessarily promote it, but it's back end stuff for our website, so I can embed it on there. I would also say that, with the podcast, interestingly, we do have a podcast. That came out of lockdown because I wanted another way to engage people in a different way, in a totally different way, that incorporated a little bit of my previous past history skill of being able to put something together, and also some of the interviews that people may have missed along the previous 2 years I'd been there. So I took some of that content and just, as reused and Yeah, exactly. And put it into a podcast, and it worked really well. Then I found I was burning it quite quickly. So we got halfway through lockdown. I'm thinking I need some other content. So I started thinking, well, actually, we can start interviewing people who are now doing virtual events for us and promote that. And it's turned into, I would love it to be a weekly one. It tends to be once every 2 weeks, just because it's hard to get people to come on sometimes. And I want it to be good content and interesting content. So, yeah, the podcast has been going really well. We're at a point now where it would be lovely to get a sponsor. Yeah, I mean, who would have thought about that in the beginning, you know? So you can actually get sponsored as well. So anybody out there, love to sponsor it, great. You know, it is a case of, you know, one of those things that came out of lockdown. We weren't doing it before, but we definitely are now.
Cool. And so with social media, and it's such a vast area, where do you find your audience is most likely hanging out? Because obviously you're going to have donations from corporate all the way through to individuals. So do you have to spread yourself mega thinly, or do you go, right, we understand who our main avatar is, they're the ones who give the most money, that's where we'll put the most content? Do you have a place that you spend the most time?
I think that you know, it would be lovely to say we'd analysed exactly where the content should go. I think I can tell you honestly, Facebook is a really big one for us. A lot of our supporters are there and will share stuff. And we do a lot of advertising on Facebook too. We also use Twitter. Instagram is bigger for us than it used to be, a lot bigger. Again, it's how people consume things for us, because on Facebook they consume stuff and they really read it and they'll like it or love it or whatever, or share it. Great. Instagram as well, they're really big into that. Twitter is not as engaging for us. We find it can be. It depends on the post as well. So, for example, if it's a really nice post about our day centre, for example, and somebody's done a lovely painted a lovely picture, that might go wild on Twitter, and it might do really well on Facebook and on Instagram. And then other days you post something you think is going to really work on Twitter, and it just doesn't. And you think, well, okay, you know, one of those.
So that leads me to ask the question then. And this is a difficult one to ask, because I know you've got a lot of other things on your plate and you're spinning many plates and stuff like that. Do you then follow the rule of being social on social media? Or is it more we put stuff out because we want people to see it and then have to step away because you've got other things to do?
Absolutely that. Absolutely that. I mean, I think that's one of the problems any marketing person will have who's on their own, is that you know, you feel like you absolutely should be putting stuff out there across, so everything's the same, pretty much. You tailor things for different, like Twitter, you only characters and things like that. You do tailor, you have to. But generally speaking, yes, we will be putting things out that we want to put out there. The social side of it, we like to gain a better, you know, an ability to have time to do that. Totally, yeah, absolutely. I think anybody who you know, if we had a team of people doing it, we would absolutely, you know, we're quite social with you know, people who ask us questions and go back and, you know, things like that. But you know, we could always do more in that respect.
But unfortunately, you just don't have the time to do the reaching out yourselves, basically.
Absolutely that. And I think, you know, particularly you know, with some of the events we do, you know, we could definitely, you know, maybe tag a few more people, or you know, do a bit more conversational stuff. Absolutely, for sure.
So what does the future have in store for the hospice then? We've just dropped into another lockdown in the UK, of course. Obviously, you're hoping to do more podcasting. Is there anything on the horizon, events-wise, content-wise, that you're thinking, right, this is coming, I must mention this?
Absolutely. Next year is a big one for us. It's our 40th year of providing palliative care to our region here in Wiltshire and in South Wiltshire and across. We've got a big patch actually, and it, you know, and for us it's a huge deal. And you know, COVID has changed a lot of what we had planned to do, but it's not going to make it any worse, I don't think, for us. We're just going to have to come at it at a different angle. You know, we're not, and also one of the critical things is not to come at it like nothing's happened. We have to at least engage in the fact that this year has been incredibly difficult for people. And you know,
very polite way.
Exactly. And you know, it's kind of like not just coming and saying, you know, hey, what guys, it's our 40th anniversary, here's a big appeal. because people are just going to go, have you not noticed what's happened? So we have to be very understanding and pitch the mood of what we talk about to our audience, understanding what we've all been through together.
Yeah, almost do like your London Marathon challenge, but for 40. So climb 40 steps or 40 flights or do 40 miles or.
Absolutely, and doing some wonderful initiatives, which we just have to do and pitch in the right way, because also there's that level of being a charity. We have to, if we're going to market ourselves in the right places, we want to do it with an understanding that people might think, well, hang on a minute, you've been through all of this and times are tough for charities and you're spending all this money. So you have to think about it from a supporter's point of view and make sure that they understand that we are utilizing budgets in the right and proper way, to gain the maximum we can, to raise the maximum funds we can for our hospice.
Absolutely. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I'm going to get all your links for the hospice, and I'm going to put them in the section below after we've finished on here. But if there was one place you want people to find you, you've mentioned Facebook. Is that kind of the place you'd really like everybody to go?
It would be lovely to join us on Facebook and find out more about our hospice, because the team there are truly incredible. It's do you know what? It's one of those things. It's the stories. It's always about the stories, and they are lovely stories, and they do hit you right there. And obviously Facebook and our main website, salisburyhospicecharity.org.uk. We're always on there.
Fantastic. Dave, thank you very, very much. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to remove you right now, but I'll come back to you in a second. Thank you to Dave for chatting to me today on Dazed and Confused. As always, I'll be back again on Monday with another live. It'll be at who knows what time, because obviously it's daddy daycare and we have to work around nap time. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you're okay out there. I know it's only day 2 of lockdown, but I know some people will already be struggling. So do reach out to anybody you know if you need some help. And obviously, if you're really interested in what Dave was chatting about, want to know more about the Salisbury Hospice, or just generally how charities maybe are using social media, I'm sure if you reached out to him and asked a few questions, he'd be happy to answer those. I'll put all the links in the section below, so you can go and click on those, whether you're watching live right now or on the replay or listening to the podcast. But until Monday, have a great weekend and continue, as always, to stay safe. Have a good one.